OK 得唔得？好，我哋影咗相先，好唔好？
過少少，右手有噴嗰啲噴過。哦，好得啦。
好，右手邊先啦。Look at your right. Right. Look at your right.
Our right.
Right hand side.
Okay, the middle. Okay, to your left.
Your center again, please.
咩話
Your center again, please.
Oh, okay. Middle.
慢慢試過嚟呢邊啦，唔該。
Our right 直接。
Okay, 最後啦，呢個嘛。好嗱，咁我開場白先啦。咁今日咧就一個嘅聯合工會嘅記者招待會嚟嘅，咁啊分別咧就係國泰機師工會啦，同埋另外就係空中服務員工會嘅。咁陣間咧都會個別工會咧可能都有啲嘢會講嘅。咁我前面嗰位咧就係會即係最主要可能係今日代表機師工會發言啦。咁佢叫做Mr. Chris Beebe。咁咧呢位係唔好意思啦。咁咧就係佢係機師工會嘅 General Secretary， 即係呢個秘書長啦，或者總幹事啦。咁另外我左手邊呢一位咧就係Ted Hazelton，Captain Ted Hazelton。咁咧就係機師工會嘅主席，咁亦都係一名嘅高級機長。咁就係我介紹兩位。咁另外咧，咁兩位大家都認識㗎啦，就係一個嘅空中服務員工會嘅主席同埋副主席。咁我而家嘅時間我交俾，由於佢哋即係兩位，我陣時都唔識講廣東話嘅，咁所以佢哋咧就可能要係英文啦。咁如果有問題嘅時候，如果需要我哋翻譯嘅時候，都可以幫下手陣間。咁或者我俾個時間交俾佢哋先。Chris, I just had a quick introduction, so you can just go ahead and make it 10 minutes, start off to a few words. Okay.
Thank you all for coming. On behalf of the HKAOA and all of its members, and the FAU and all of its members, we'd like to thank Jeremy Tam and the other members of LegCo for this last-minute meeting that they were able to set up with us and express our concerns over our unified situation this past week. I'll just now turn any other further questions over to my General Secretary of the HKAOA, Chris Beebe. Thank you.
We have a brief statement to read to you first. So let me go through that, and then we will be happy to take some questions from you. And again, thank you to the FAU that's behind us. We're joining forces. The associations believe Cathay Pacific has acted without regard for personal circumstances, reasonable consultation, or individual consequences. In doing so, it has irretrievably undermined its relationship with its employees. Their decision will undoubtedly lead to personal bankruptcies, mental health issues, and potentially worse situations for those who will have suffered at the hands of morally bankrupt management. We wish to dispel any perception that Cathay Pacifics are only temporary residents in this great city who come to Hong Kong to work part of their life, make their money, and leave with no care for the city or its people. On the contrary, most Cathay Pacific pilots have made Hong Kong their home and intend to stay here for their entire careers, which can extend, as you know, many decades. They hope to retire here, and fully 1/3 of our membership was born in Hong Kong. Those that the associations represent are also working people of Hong Kong. The associations cannot allow the effects of a short to medium-term pandemic encourage ruthless behavior from any Hong Kong company that will lead to this devastation of families and a long-term, extreme, heartless, and opportunistic commandeering of rights, job security, and welfare. Cathay Pacific will recover, but the pilots and the flight attendants cannot, unless they have an opportunity to find a way to recover. All we have asked for in the previous 9 months, on many occasions, is simply inclusion in the decision-making process. That has been denied. The association believes that what has been proffered is entirely unworkable. The changes to our working conditions fail to actually function well with their very expensive new rostering system. Poorly designed modifications are short-sighted, one-sided, and garnered on the backs of broken families and ruined careers. Cathay Pacific is now being asked to make Cathay Pacific staff members are now being asked to make the single largest decision in their career, which was over in 7 short days, culminating with a decision that will have long-lasting career and lifetime effects. This affects their wives, husbands, partners, children, and as I said before, it is permanent. All that Cathay has offered in this time, and let's keep in mind that they have been at this since March, is intimidation, threats of termination, a need to comply with their orders handed down by senior management. The eyes of Hong Kong and the world will now be looking on how this seniority plays out. If Cathay Pacific is successful in perpetuating this opportunistic act, the blueprint for oppression of Hong Kong workers will be set. Other employers will exploit the current climate to the detriment of both Hong Kong and all Hong Kong employees. It is up to us today, working with the Labor Department, the LegCo, and whatever other resources we can bring together to put a pause on this and talk to come to a solution that works long-term for Hong Kong and for Hong Kong workers. Let me add that what we are seeking from Cathay Pacific, to begin, is an extension of the deadline that they have imposed on the flight attendants and on the pilots. We are also seeking a review every 6 months with Cathay management to review with them what the company is doing, how it's recovering, and how also the pilots and the flight attendants can recover as well. For the pilots, we have had redundancies. We would anticipate and in fact demand that those not only occur as a redundancy in reverse seniority order, but the recall from redundancy is done in seniority order. And I think more than anything, what we seek is respect and dignity in this process. Without doubt, Mr. Tang, the CEO of Cathay Pacific, expects respect and dignity from his staff. We expect no less from him. He can change this. He can make the future of Cathay Pacific something that works with inclusion of the people who will be here long after he is gone. Mr. Tang will retire. He will move on to something else. We will all be here, either with the benefits or the consequences of what is happening today. With that, I think we can take some of your questions.
好，有冇啲咩特別問題想問？中英都 OK。
Are there any further actions that you plan to do with the FAU in pressing these six to listen to your calls? Because it seems like you have been present with this for days. What would you say about the process, and what more would you do to try to make your voice heard?
Well, I think it's important to say that There are no options off the table at this point. But I would also have to tell you, since this is in its nascent or its beginning phase, we have yet to put together a comprehensive plan. The good news is we have joined together. We are working together. We will work together, and we will get through this together.
I know that you're planning for a protest or assembly. How is that going, and how successful do you think that will do in pressing CX to listen to your calls?
That's still something that's being worked on, and it has not yet been determined as to whether we'll be able to do that or not.
How many pilots have signed the new contract already at this moment?
Do you know how many
How
pilots
many
have signed?
pilots?
How many pilots have
Has
been?
signed the new contract already?
Well, of course not, because we would have to get that information from Cathay Pacific, and they give us no information. So, no, we would love to have something for you, but we're not provided with any information. Just as we haven't been provided with any information on their plans and whether they're justified or not. We have to keep in mind what they're doing with the cuts that they're making, again, permanent cuts, are having an effect on people's lives in an immeasurable way. But Cathay has not said that there is a justification for what they're doing. They have not disclosed any plans. Yes, they have said how many flights they'll operate for the near future, but surely they must have a plan beyond that. Surely Cathay Pacific must have more than a one-year plan.
No, I think he's asking how many pilots signed course limits.
Right.
That's the question.
And the answer is we don't know. Same answer, because again, Cathay has not told us. Cathay does not provide information to the employees.
And also about 27 questions a day, we're still waiting for reply.
Well, that's another reason for asking for the deadline. The deadline is not only a very significant decision, but there are still many answers that we need to ask of the company, questions we need to ask, and answers that need to be provided by Cathay Pacific, because again, 7 days is a very compressed amount of time. And yes, some flight attendants and pilots are flying. There's pilots are in the simulator. There are safety requirements for the flight attendants. And of course, some people have not seen their families in a very long time. So to have an opportunity to have a reasonable discussion with family members is simply really not reasonable for a 7-day period. But we're past that now. We're into the 14-day period. But even now, to make these significant career-changing decisions, it needs to be extended. We need more time.
Earlier, you didn't say not one single pilot has signed the contract. You didn't say that. Or did you? Okay. 唔好誤會佢啊！佢意思唔係話一個都冇簽嘅。
Probably worth to mention a number of inquiries, and they haven't get back to you, get back to the members. You mentioned about 27 something per day.
We've been, Jeremy has mentioned the number of questions that we've been receiving in regard to more specifics on what the company has imposed. And they've probably been running 27 or more per day. I will say the company has answered many of them, but there are still more to be answered.
You have asked to seek the extension of the deadline, right? But do you have any hint of the any people from the Cathay Pacific that you want to extend the deadline, or any of your requests?
Put it this way, how many meetings you have so far with Cathay Pacific?
You mean since the announcement, since the restructuring announcement? There's been one very brief meeting that Captain Hazelton attended with one other officer, and that was of short duration and provided no details.
Are you meeting up again to push for the deadline extension demand?
We have not met with the company. We have had to do everything by letter in the hope that they would respond positively to us, but they have not so far.
Have you ever got any response from the company that you want to meet them with the Labour Department? And also, how much time do you want for you to make a decision?
I'm sorry, again?
How much exactly how much time do you think is reasonable for you to make a decision for the new contract?
More than what we've been given.
I mean, like any time frame, like a week, 2 weeks.
No, certainly another week would be a minimum, preferably 2 weeks. Again, we're not asking for this. We understand the company is an extremist. We understand that these are turbulent times. We understand that Cathay Pacific right now is having a very, very difficult business environment to work in. We get that.
Have you ever got any response from the company that you want to have a meeting with them together with the Labour Department?
Our meeting with the Labor Department?
You want to have a
You want to have a joint meeting with Labour Department and Cathay Pacific.
Of course.
And if
Yes,
so,
we've
what have you done?
We've done that. Thank
Did
you.
you demand for that?
Yes, we have sent a letter to Cathay and to the Labor Department saying that, of course, we would like to have them in a three-way meeting so that we have a chance to discuss these things. We've not yet heard a response from the company.
想問翻先問，即係其實你哋嘅工會其實講個狀況係咪都好似機師所講，即係都係by letters 去回覆公司啊，或者公司點樣？
其實我哋同公司見面比較多嘅，我哋大概有我哋同公司見面比較多嘅，大概見咗4次。咁今個星期2係最後一次見面啦。咁之後我哋都係繼續一直有 keep 住用電郵聯絡。
Just to build on what we were saying, we've only had the single meeting, one meeting with Cathay Pacific management since they announced the restructuring.
Did they refuse to see you people, or they didn't respond?
Yeah, thanks. They have simply not responded. So have they said?
Ask.
Of course.
You did ask.
Of course. We ask on a regular basis.
Well, I want to add one more point that the Civic Party and the Democratic Party have sent a letter to the chairman of Manpower Panel to have an urgent meeting as soon as possible to discuss the incident. And just after the House Committee today, Andrew Wan and I talked to the chairman, Lok Jong-hong, directly. He verbally promised us that he would try his best to have a meeting before next Wednesday. That's the deadline for the new contract. So we urge Mr. Lok to speak up to help the pilots and the flight attendants. Thank you.
我諗頭先我之前同工會都講過有幾點㗎啦，即係我哋喺立法會裏邊咧曾經都進行過唔同嘅討論啦。頭先你一見到內委會裏邊，我哋都係不斷都有提國泰呢個議題。咁但係即係主席啊嗰啲完全唔理啦，仍然都覺得就算同張建宗亦都係講話有其他嘅渠道你哋去處理。咁而好似頭先林卓廷議員所講啦，咁公民黨同埋民主黨咧其實都係分別去咗信呢一個嘅人力嘅事務 務委員會同埋呢一個嘅經濟發展事務委員會咧，就要求盡快開特別會議。咁頭先咧就人力事務委員會嘅主席啦，陸頌雄咧就應承咗林卓廷咧，就話係會喺星期三或之前，即係喺呢一個嘅即係 deadline 之前啦，就盡量就安排一次嘅特別會議。咁所以咧，大家記者咧都係可以問一問佢究竟安排成點嘅。
OK。
我都想問下咧，即係除咗覺得新合約要求7日內簽署之外，其實喺條款上有冇覺得特別苛刻嘅？
你想機師塔定係空中服務員工㗎？係咪啊？OK。Emma，你先。
其實我哋覺得呢個公司提出共度時間啦，咁我哋係同意嘅。我哋知道而家經營係好困難嘅，所以我哋只係希望呢個係短期過渡性嘅合約，而唔係一個長遠嘅薪酬大幅減少嘅合約咯。咁我哋即係呢個都係最主要對呢個新合約反對嘅地方。
How much more of a success that you think your cause would be met instead of pressing individually? Yeah. From now on, how do you think about how much of a success the experts would listen to you?
Just let him finish it to answer the first question first,
Okay.
And then get back to that one.
Well, you asked what is deficient in the new contract that was not included in the contracts that have now been squashed. We need a lot of time to tell you because they're so numerous. Not only is the contract lacking in many of the security that was included previously, it allows Cathay to unilaterally change almost the entire contract at will. It is embodied in multiple policies, and the policies do not have to be agreed to consensually. The policies are simply at the discretion of Cathay Pacific. A seniority system is essentially done away with, and that makes you an at-will employee. The discipline and grievance procedure that we had, which was first world, is now third world. So the things that they have done here are to not just eliminate security, they have essentially built in a huge level of uncertainty in regard to your employment, a huge lack of security in terms of your employment. And then finally, what's perhaps most insidious of all is they can determine the number of hours at which you can receive full pay. So those hours can be changed by the company at will. There's no basis, just like there's no basis for what they're doing in all of this. There's no fundamental basis for the way they've structured the new contract, other than they can get away with it. They can do it. Because when you have a group of employees who are fearful for their jobs and uncertain about their future, you can get away with a lot of things. But wouldn't it be better if we could collectively construct a future for all of us, as opposed to just the few who will not be here constructing the future for all who will?
Uh, 其實公司都係比較強硬嘅，就認為14日呢個限期係足夠所有人去決定轉唔轉新約，而佢哋都覺得永久轉呢個新合約先會令到佢哋可以繼續經營落去。
OK。
好。佢有見嗰條問題。
Unifying forces will make your request more successful.
Yes. The answer is yes.
No, the question
Together.
is why and how?
Well, I understand what our question was asked already, and give us a little bit of time to put something together, and we'll be happy to share that with you. We'd prefer to share it with our members first, but we'll be happy to share it with you as we go through this process. But, of course, stronger together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Some individuals may also ask for your contact.
Okay.
And maybe when you agree with their name.